I always tell people the material that you do, it really has to resonate and something you have to stand behind. If you're doing these jokes and they really don't mean anything to you, what's the point if you get in trouble?
Sure.
But what do I know?
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap. Of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. Helping me do all of that this week is some LATV Family. You might know him as one of the hosts of our show, The Zoo. He's an incredibly funny comedian. Our guy, Nicky Paris, will be hopping on in just a little bit to help me break down some of these headlines. Before that, though, let's get to some of the BS from this last week. All right, so this last week, the F-boy Democrats were back at it again, making promises they knew damn well they couldn't keep. Now, this all played out as the Dems made an attempt to change filibuster rules in order to pass a voting bill, and this failed, of course, thanks to opposition from their own people. Yes, Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, both, Democrats, at least on paper, voted against these changes to the filibuster. Now, this is all incredibly relevant because the Republicans have been using the filibuster like that one mother hen that exists in like every woman's friend group. We all know the one. She blocks every dude in the club from talking to her friends just because she's a hater and is not getting any play for herself. Except in this case, instead of somebody being, harmlessly blocked from having a night of potential mediocre casual sex, the Republicans instead are actually trying to block Americans in this country from their right to vote. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Not sure if you're familiar or up on it. And for those of you who aren't completely up on all that's happening, the Dems were trying to pass a package of voting measures, one of them being the John Lewis bill, which focuses on restoring the power of the federal government to oversee state voting procedures to prevent discrimination against minority voters. Should be like a home run, right? Why would we want to discriminate against minority voters? Well, except for the fact that we live in America spelled with 3 Ks, right? And the other thing they were trying to pass was the Freedom to Vote Act, which will do a multitude of things for voters, including making Election Day a federal holiday, meaning voters no longer have to figure out and juggle how they're going to go to work, take care of the family, and still make it to the polls in time to have their vote heard. So this all seems pretty normal, right? Like it should be relatively easy for people to get behind. But of course, that is not the state of our country right now. And unfortunately, the only way around the Republicans acting like a mother hen who's had one too many cranberry vodkas, the only way around that was for the Dems to change the filibuster rules. And all they needed to do, right? It's pretty simple. All they had to do was get all of the Senate Democrats to agree. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, it should be. In theory, it should be. Except for the glaring fact that we live in a country where apparently neither side seems to give a damn about the people they were put in office to represent. Kyrsten Sinema and possibly Mother Hen of the Year, Joe Manchin, have been making it very clear that they are far more interested in the power and media attention that comes along with being, well, a pain in the ass. That's the only way to put it. Which then leads to the question that my guy, Charlemagne the God, so eloquently asked when he asked our Madam Vice President, who's the real president in this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden? She didn't seem to like that question. Personally, I think it's a fair point, considering the state of things and how nothing seems to get done. And that's why, to that question, I would personally answer, does it even really matter anymore? Because whether it's a Democrat, a Republican, or a mother hen C-blocking at the club, don't nobody seem interested in giving the people what they actually want. Sad, sad times, y'all. Now help me lighten up the mood just a little bit. We have our LATV family, one of the hosts of our show, The Zoo, comedian extraordinaire, Nicky Paris. How we feeling?
Good morning. How are you? I'm great. I'm like, is it almost Friday? Does anybody else feel like that. I just want to lay.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of my life now working from home. I get to just lay around. So every day is Friday for me.
Right? There's so many times when people come to my house and they think I've just passed away, but I'm just laying here. I just don't want to move.
Nothing wrong with that. And I got to say, we were talking about this before the cameras kicked on. We're both fellow New Yorkers. So this is a nice little vibe.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always talking to people from LA and they just sometimes, they don't get it necessarily sometimes.
They're afraid of the directness.
Yes.
I'm like the Loch Ness Monster in a lot of ways because I'm so direct and people just run. They take families and their small children and they run like it's a tsunami. And it used to only be when I took my top off at the beach, but now it's just my personality. So
I love it. Listen,
I don't know.
No running here. I'm all about it. I want to get into some stories and get your perspective. Of course, we'll get into all that you have going on as well. But first and foremost, if it's cool with you, I want to dive into some trending stories from this last week.
Let's do it.
All right. So, I mean,
I'm in.
This is what you do. So, I mean, listen, let's start with the elephant, unfortunately, in the room that we can't get away from, and that is COVID. And this Omicron variant, and I guess some good news as we're hearing, where they're saying that it's looking like it's beginning to retreat a little bit. They're talking about the sort of cases that they're having have not been dire as we saw early on in the pandemic, which is all great news, especially for the vaccinated. And they're saying that we actually might only be a few weeks away from being where we were towards last summer before Delta happened, where we were kind of like outside. I mean, for you, I know it has to be particularly tough and a little bit sketchy because you travel for comedy shows and all these different things. I mean, how has this kind of changed your life a bit, I guess, over the course of this last year as we keep going into these different stages and kind of the idea of, maybe our jobs being taken away at certain points because of, a breakout of a variant we can't control?
Dramos, I love COVID. I'm so sorry for all the lives that were lost, but if I could lock down for the next 40 years, I would dream come true for me. Everybody, obviously I performed a lot throughout the pandemic. I performed in parking lots. I really was like your neighborhood hooker. Anywhere that I was performing in parking lots, subway trains. I actually think what I was doing was sadder than stripping. I think you certainly made more money than I did. Yeah. To be honest with you, it's so nice. This is terrible to say, and obviously it's terrible that so many lives were lost. Yeah. But just not see some people for 2 years, it's been incredible. Yeah, it really has been. I don't want to go to your bar mitzvah or your daughter's quinceañera. I don't want to go to any of it. And come to this event. I would. I really, I think I might be up for an Oscar nomination for the acting I've done in terms of having a fake cough. In terms of work, it's a crazy time in the world, but I feel like COVID is the new HPV. Like if you don't have it, your best friend does. Right.
That's a bit of a messed up analogy, but I like it. So, I mean, I agree because I think for me, my inner introvert is just flourishing right now. I don't have to do anything I don't necessarily want to, which I definitely agree. And I also think that to your credit, what you're talking about, kind of the way you got creative during the pandemic for performing, it's like, I think those of us who really just stepped into this, I mean, I got the LATV show because I was doing IG lives and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So I think for anybody that really just accepted, hey, this is the way it is right now. There's no getting around it as much as I want to pout and cry about it. How do I make this into something that actually benefits me? I think those people that, are the ones that are kind of thriving right now and really are finding new and creative ways to express themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a crazy time. But, am I afraid of COVID? Like, I'm afraid I'm going to give it to somebody. But I also used to eat Lunchables. Right. So, I think that was the biggest roll of the dice for my body, personally. The COVID, I'm like, I mean, I've done worse things.
That's true. And I'm also the product of a New York City public school system. So those free breakfasts and lunches, probably weren't the healthiest thing for my body either.
I'm from Staten Island. The fumes from the dump have already taken their toll. So this is who I am now. It's a shell of who I should be, but this is it. And I don't care at this point. I'm like, there used to be a time in my life, I'm like, I'm going to keep growing and evolving. And then I reached an age where I was like, you know what? Screw it. I don't care. I'm just going to roll with however I show up. Sometimes I have a lazy eye. Anything can happen.
I love just you're stepping into your authenticity. I love that. That's a beautiful.
I'm busted. Thing. What do I care? That's my attitude for this year. I was a mess last year, and this year I'm up for the challenge. Amazing. See what happens.
I
may start bar fighting. I've always, this is totally going off topic, but it's always been a dream of mine to put a piece of gum in someone's hair, and I haven't done it. And I'm hoping that this year I'll get the chance. So
I love that. Fingers crossed. I love that. You're kind of bringing us back to these, elementary school days, and that actually segues perfectly into the next story, which is a story about sixth graders at a public school in Buffalo, where they were having Spanish class homework, and this has prompted outrage, where it had it in quotes, and you were supposed to translate this into Spanish. Quote, not you, the sixth graders.
I was like, hold on, let me get the paper and pen. Right.
No, you're good. This is what was on the paper for these kids, though. It said, quote, you, and they put in parentheses, friendly, are Mexican and ugly. And this is what you're supposed to translate into Spanish. And then the part that really kind of shows where they stand, they had another line a couple parts down. It said, you, in parentheses, politely, are pretty and American. And people are outraged, obviously. And to me, the thing that like showed me how messed up some of our kind of brainwashing, I guess, has been, you have people tweeting saying, I think this might have been racist. You think that it might have been racist. I mean, it's an interesting time to be alive that we still see things like this happening.
I'm just relieved to hear they're still teaching in school.
Right.
Because every time you see what's going on, I'm like, thrusting your pelvis isn't getting an education. These TikTok kids, I mean, I have family members, they're younger. This has nothing to do with the story, but I see them and I'm, they're like, what do you think of my TikToks? I'm like, you're not very talented. I hope you have a plan B. I'm not sure if you're interested in insurance, but I think you'll be selling it if you keep up those performance skills and you don't keep the dance moves tight. But that's terrible. I mean, that everybody should be outraged. And if you want to go storm the school, maybe I shouldn't be saying that.
I mean, people have stormed things for lesser, for things that actually weren't real, where this is actually real.
Part of me is like, am I afraid of getting canceled? What are you going to take? My Jeep Compass?
Right.
Bring it on. Right. No, but seriously, those parents should be outraged. And you know what? I'd like to defer to the PTA.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know if they're involved, but they just are the best person to blame.
Right. Always blame them. When in doubt, blame the PTA. Absolutely.
I do. I blame them for Hurricane Katrina and 9/11.
I mean, it's crazy though, because you try to, best case scenario, somebody is just so ignorant in the year 2022. They don't see how this is problematic. And that person has a license to teach the next generation of children. Like, at the very least, you know what I mean? Obviously, it seems far more sinister, but at the very least, it's like, how are people getting these jobs? You know what I mean? Like, in literally probably one of the most important career choices somebody could possibly make.
I know a few people who are teachers that shouldn't be.
Right.
And I know these people, and I tell them, you're who's educating the youth of America.
Yeah.
That's alarming. But in some ways it makes sense. I'm like, it really adds up if you do. I'm not a mathematician, but if I was, I would cross multiply and divide and be like, this adds up.
Yeah. I mean, I love my teachers, but sadly it's kind of one of those jobs like being a small town cop, where it's kind of like, you know what? I grew up in this town. I don't really know what else I want to do. Why not just become a part of the institution? You know what I mean? It seems like it's like, I hunt deer on the weekend. I think I could be a good cop. You know what I mean? That's what it seems like a lot of these. And similarly, people that I know that I went to high school with, and I'm just like, how are you a police officer?
I'd like to speak to HR.
The PTA, HR. I need all of them on a Zoom call. I want all of them.
That's where I come in. And if you're listening and there's a hostile situation, I will be reaching out to your local PTA. You can count on me.
I love that. All right. So one more thing I think that people are outraged over, and it is Gentefied getting canceled by Netflix after 2 seasons. And according to Deadline, they're saying Netflix's reasoning behind this is because the second season failed to crack the top 10 in its charts when it dropped in November. I mean, obviously, you're in the industry. you know how difficult it is to get any sort of show or anything like this made, let alone a show that's focusing on people of color, let alone focusing on a group of people who have been demonized in this country as far as the idea of immigration, all this kind of stuff. I mean, you hear this, you read about this. What's your kind of instant knee-jerk reaction?
I think that the Netflix top 10 is full of crap. I mean, they pick their own top 10. Sure. And it's always the stuff that comes out. I think it's all political. And I don't, a lot of stuff, Netflix, I don't even enjoy watching Netflix. I really do. I just feel like they just churn out such crap.
Yeah.
And, I just feel like every time I turn on, I see that poster for the Dairy Girls with the girls that are like, and I'm like, I'm not using this app anymore. I have PTSD. So, I know a lot of people on Gentefied, and, I think it's a shame, but you know what, all those people, keep your head up.
Yeah.
Because now you'll get unemployment. No, but I think there'll be another project. There are more things out there. It's terrible to see. It's such a. I always have to tell people every time I do stand up every single night. There are so many nights where I just do anything, and I'm like, why didn't I go into real estate?
Right.
I'm like, why do I really feel that poorly about myself? This is what I do. So you know what? This business is all political, and if you don't, I always tell people, if you don't have the burning drive to do this, don't do it.
Yeah.
Get your local job at Joann's Fabrics or Home Goods. You might be happier.
Yeah.
So I didn't really answer the question. That's really my beauty in doing interviews. Sometimes I get asked a question and I'm like, I'm going to give you an answer to a completely different question and let you put it together what I'm saying.
I'm gonna answer something that's actually burning on my head, regardless of what you asked me. I like this approach. I really do enjoy this.
This is like a really messed up game of scavenger hunt. Right. Like, bring me a hose, and I just bring you a family of 17. Right. No, but that's terrible that they canceled that show, and there's a lot of talented people on it, and big loss for Netflix, I think, and that's why I watch Hulu.
Ooh, okay. I like the little subtle shade being thrown there. But I think
Netflix, if you're listening, I'll do anything. I am so desperate. I'm dressed like a lesbian librarian at 8:30 in the morning. So when you behave like this, beggars can't be choosers.
I think, Percy, you are wearing the hell out of that houndstooth cardigan that you have going on right now. So listen, you're doing it.
Good lighting, but thank you.
I mean, but to your point, I think it is incredibly political, and I also wonder, like, who there is actually like of the culture, understanding the importance of it and understanding that certain things can't be measured by your own and by these certain analytics. You know what I mean? Because I think you have, and I've seen this, I've been in the rooms where you have a lot of these like white executives who are like, yeah, we want like a really cool Latinx type of show. And like, but we want white people to also really love it. And it's like, okay, well, you're kind of then putting us in a position where it's like, water the hell out of this show that you essentially wanted because you wanted that Latin representation, but we can't just have it where it's, our culture. And if people like it, outside of our culture, so be it. But just because we want white people to like it, it has to, meet certain other standards. I feel like, other like white shows, I don't think when they're making that, they're like, hey, but are the Latinos and the Blacks going to love, Party of Five? You know what I mean? Like, are they going to love that show? I don't think that was going through anybody's mind, but yet when it's our shows, that's kind of the language that happens.
I just think we should stop making shows. Let's just take each other off. There's too much going on. I you know what I mean? It's too much. Yeah. Every 10 seconds, there's another mini series.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm tired of it.
I think we should just actually have your little cousins making TikToks for the world. Like, I think that the world should be subjective. But I think that once they've suffered through that, they'll be like, you know what? Maybe we were a little quick on Gentefied. If this is all that we're left with, you know what I mean? Maybe that's what we need.
I don't know if that's what we need. I don't know what I need, but I will say that one of my idols is Amelia Earhart, who disappeared. And there are rumors that her plane crashed, but I don't think it did. Yeah. And I'm just saying that if I happen to go missing, I'm fine. I want you to have the exclusive on your show. That if I just happen to disappear for a good, 17 years, I'm fine. And I'm in Jamaica with a blunt.
Oh, I love this. You heard it here first. I love this. So, I mean, let's go on to some good news here. We'll end on some good news in the form of Cardi B, who has somehow become like the savior, both politically and socially, that we didn't know that we needed. And she is actually stepping in now. I don't know if you heard about this story in New York City, where you had that apartment building fire, where you had 17 people unfortunately killed. You had kids and everything like that. Cardi's actually stepping in and paying for the funeral costs for all of these families who are going through this. And I just want to take a moment to celebrate that, because I think we live in this world where it's like, you have these billionaires and they're just going off into space when they could be doing little things like this. And then you have somebody like Cardi B who, I think anybody who's not of the culture would be quick to write her off as, unintelligent or, being bad for a bad representation for women or all these things. But people like that are actually doing the work. And I just want to, kind of take a moment to commend that.
I think it's amazing. Yeah. And I also would like to send the mass card. So if there's anything, I don't know if you have any information or if I need to contact the city or the people at WAP headquarters, I will also be getting those people's information and doing my part. Just because I want to impress you. And for the families, of course. For both of those reasons. I'm just that type of person.
Both are important. Both priorities.
I could be biblical.
Yeah, I think that was very, very profound of you. So let's talk about your comedy. Let's kind of.
We have to.
Yeah, because I find it fascinating, the world of comedians. As obviously as difficult and dark as it can be. Especially when you're comparing yourself to a street hooker. I think that
that's one of the better things I've compared myself to. If you see me topless.
But I think there is something about this kind of freedom, and as much as people want to take it away, this freedom to find the joke in just about anything, right? The thing that people are like, there's no funny here. And it's like your job to find the funny in that. Is there ever, I don't know, do it's like cancel culture scary? Or is there a fear of going too far, of people not understanding it? Because it just seems like this really outside thing that in normal life we're taught do not do.
It always comes up about cancel culture for me. And my take on it is, I think that I consider myself to be an artist, like Vincent Van Gogh, except with 2 earlobes. And, I think that artistically, the joke has to be that funny if you're going to make the risk.
Sure.
And I'm not about, I don't think you should put limitations on art. Yeah. However, I think that it really comes down to the intent and meaning of what you're saying. Because, if you're saying something to put somebody down or be malicious or hurt somebody, you're getting laughs at somebody. I mean, it all depends. I mean, I didn't write the book on it. For me personally, and I could really only speak for me. Yeah. If something really makes me laugh, I'll take the risk and say it. Like, for example, my grandpa's dying of Alzheimer's right now. And I was like, I didn't call him this week, but he won't remember. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But that's, not everyone's going to love that joke, but that is the truth. He doesn't know if I called. He thinks I live in Italy. So, that's funny to me. But I think that in terms of just like, I mean, it's all about, I always tell people the material that you do, it really has to resonate and something you have to stand behind. If you're doing these jokes and they really don't mean anything to you, what's the point if you get in trouble?
Sure.
But what do I know?
That's always how a comedian ends things. They'll be like, they'll give you this whole spiel of why it's okay for them to do it, and then just be like, but I'm just a comedian. What do I know? I think of that. I love the ability. You have the ability to just always throw that up there. Like, well, I don't know anything.
You know what my real ability is? To do nothing. That's what I really learned. That's really becoming my real passion. And I think I'm kidding and you're laughing, but I'm really not. I'm all of a sudden, I just turned 29 this year. I feel like I'm 79.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get one of those chairs that go up and down the stairs. I'm just tired.
I mean, all right. So last thing I want to ask you as well, because I feel like I haven't heard this spoken about as much. I know you're a big advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. And I think that at least when it comes to this idea of toxic masculinity, you hear this when it's like, oh, you're funny for a woman, you know what I mean? Or whatever the case may be. Do you feel like you kind of have to fight some of those things where it's like, I'm not, a gay comedian. I am just a comedian, right? Like, how do you kind of balance out where you want to be that representation, but you also don't want that to be something that people are like, kind of like, oh, you're funny for that thing, you know what I mean? Because you represent that one audience or whatever it is.
I think that's just the world, unfortunately. I think realistically speaking from the business side of things, and not being a comedian, I think that people still need to come, that's just the way that people look at marketing and things like that. And, it doesn't make it right or, people are really dumb.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I don't believe in any labels or anything like that. I think, I think I'm a comedian because I'm funny, not because of this or that. And,
Sure.
when you go up there, you could be those things. There are a lot of people that are gay or trans, but it's really about your unique viewpoint. And that's what makes it so special because, I may have a different viewpoint than this person. And that's what makes comedy so special. It's all about how we see the world individually. Like all of us see the world in a different way, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
So that's what really comedy should be about for me. It's about honoring your viewpoint of how you see the world, regardless of who you are, anything like that.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great way to put it. So obviously we have the Zoo on LATV. What else do you want people to check out? Anything you're working on that you want to push people towards?
Just don't. Just forget about me. Just let me do my thing. You can follow me on Instagram. Okay. I'm on tour. All over, and really wishing I was home, but I'll be there. You go on NickyParis.com. Yeah, look me up or don't, doesn't matter. But thanks for your love if you have it.
Nothing matters, Nicky Paris. I appreciate you for hopping on the show, man. It's been good to
thank you.
Connect.
It was great getting to hang with you.
Absolutely. Man, big shout out to our guest this week, Nicky Paris. Make sure you check him out on our show, The Zoo, as well as if he comes to a city near you on his comedy tour. And before we get out of here, man, I want to end on some positivity, of course, in the form of a positive quote. Now, it only seemed appropriate for this week's quote to come to us from John Lewis. And that quote is, "Nothing can stop the power of a committed and determined people to make a difference in our society." Why? Because human beings are the most dynamic link to the divine on this planet. And I just thought that was so incredibly important, especially during times like this where it's very easy to feel helpless, right? We've been asked, come out and vote, make your voice heard. We need people to come out in record numbers. And we did that. We delivered on our end. And sadly, the people that we put in office don't seem to be delivering on theirs. And I don't want this to be something that deters people from not using their voice, from not using their right as an American citizen in this country to vote. It is important that regardless of how jaded we may have become to this whole system, how disappointed we are, we still continue to use our voice. And outside of just voting, making sure that we are making ourselves loud and clear for those that are in power. Let them know we are upset. We are not pleased with what they've been doing. We are not satisfied with the job that they are doing. And we all have to come together, unified together to make sure our voices are as loud as humanly possible. And that is the only way to get things done, to keep pushing and pushing and pushing them until they can no longer ignore us. So don't allow the current events to bring you down, to deter you from participating in your right as an American citizen. Now is the time more than ever for us to double down on what we feel is important and get together and make sure our voices are heard together. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into another episode. I appreciate all the love and support as we get ready to close out on season 2 of the show, which is crazy for me to even say. But have no fear. We're back, season 3, right around the corner. I'm so excited to bring you guys a whole nother season of the recap, giving you your current events, real, raw, uncut, and unfiltered, as we always do. I will talk to y'all soon. Until then, stay safe. Take care. Bye.